Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Half Hour. And today I have one of my dear friends with me, Vanessa McGovern. Hi, Vanessa.
Hello. So happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you on. So, a lot of times I say that I'm so excited to introduce today's guest, but I am so excited to introduce today's guest. So, Vanessa and I met years ago, probably around the 2008 timeline, plus or
Right.
minus. And we met in a women's group, and we were budding in our career. We were late 20s, and we were just as driven then as we are now. But we definitely gravitated to each other. And from that time till now, we're still involved in each other's lives. We don't get to talk as maybe much as we used to, but we are still there to be friends and also talk career and all the other things too. So we've been big supporters of each other. And before I go into more about Vanessa, I know this is a passion of both of ours, how important it is to have female friends that have similar interests and drives as you do.
Mhm.
Because Vanessa and I have leaned on each other at different moments in time to help get through difficult situations. So before we go into more about you, if you want to just comment on that real fast, because I know
Yeah.
you're passionate about it too.
Yeah. So passionate about it. And our connection is really what carried me through a very difficult and confusing time early on in my career trajectory. And to this day, when I look back at that connection, like I feel like emotional thinking about it because the opportunity for us to bounce off of each other and to deeply
Yeah.
connect and talk thoughtfully about career challenges we were having at the height of it was what kept me, I think, sane and focused on forward.
Yes.
And it is such a blessing to know that has been able to carry through well over a decade now.
I
And
know.
it's
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 really awesome.
it's critical to have those types of relationships in your life.
Yeah, it really is. And similar for me, I mean, I think for myself, I found myself undervaluing myself in some roles. And then I had you being like, no, you're better than that.
Mhm.
Take this role or ask for more money. And it's just so awesome having that champion.
Yeah.
So let's get into more about you. I would love to share with the audience that as of today, you are Chief Sales and Marketing Officer. You've also served on a board. I will give it to you to tell them more about your current role, the boards and things that you have served on, and then I want to know more about your backstory. But we'll start there. So tell the
Okay.
audience about yourself.
Yes, thank you. So, Chief Sales and Marketing Officer for Gifted Travel Network. I'm also one of the three co founders of this travel management firm. And so, our company is not a consumer facing company, which I know gets very confusing to especially family and friends, but we host essentially hundreds of travel advisors that are the direct sellers of travel. And so, through my role of Chief Sales and Marketing Officer, I am leading pretty significant size team at this point and driving a pretty significant amount of business through the travel advisors to our preferred partners. And I oversee the team that oversees over 100 different partners, the partner relations department, and that can include cruise lines, tour operators, destination boards,
So cool.
excursion companies. I oversee the team that is delivering member services, so travel advisors that belong to our network. There's a whole suite of services that we provide for them, from technology to commission tracking and marketing support and education. So there's just a lot to support for modern day travel advisors. And our company, Gifted Travel Network, is really leading in that space. We're leading in the space of education. And we are embarking on some pretty significant initiatives right now from a technology standpoint that have caused some shifts as well in order to make sure that we are most relevant in our space. So that sort of extremely broad description of the things that I'm currently doing. And then what started me on this journey really began with, it's just funny how these things happen, like just this serendipitous
Mhm.
conversation that I had with a friend going into my last year of my 4-year history degree living in Canada. I was about to start my fourth year, and I had just come back from studying abroad. I didn't want to come back from study abroad. I wanted to stay in Europe because I loved it so much. But I came back to finish my fourth year and I was seeking ways to stay international. And a friend knew a friend that worked on cruise ships. And the more I dug into it, the more I was thinking that this would be the next step for me. And fast forward, I was hired by Celebrity Cruise Lines as a seasonal youth staff because they bring on people to basically look after the kids during peak seasons like holidays and things like that. So I went for Christmas and New Year's that year, for 3 weeks and looked after children in the kids club. And that's how I started on board cruise ships. And so that's how my journey began in the travel industry. And that one decision in that moment of thinking I was just going to have fun and go work on a cruise ship actually really changed the trajectory of my entire career. What I thought my career was going to be, I thought I would apply for law school. I was definitely, or if I went, it was thought I was going to go to teacher's college. Those were sort of the two paths that I thought I would take until I worked on a cruise ship. And then I just loved it so much. And so fast forward 7 years later, from that point, I had shifted into another role on board. I was working with the largest privately owned art gallery, and I was
Park West, right? Was that the name of it?
yeah,
I
gallery,
remember.
based in Southfield, Michigan. And I had an incredible opportunity with them. And I like to say living and working on board a cruise ship really prepares you for anything in life. And really the foundation of my career was that time there. So because I am Canadian and the company Park West at the time was able to sponsor my work visa, and I was able to move to Florida, because that's really at the heart of the cruise industry, as many of you know. I'm sure readers can appreciate that, or listeners, excuse me. And so that's how I lived in Florida. That's how we met at a networking event. And then from there, I sort of transitioned into the booking side of the business. And I started because I was on the onboard side. And then I grew my career in learning about the travel agency
So
side.
awesome.
So that's how it all started. And then it's all kind of grown from there. And one decision leads to another. And all of a sudden, I'm telling my husband, I'm going to start a business with 2 other women. And by the way, they live in North Carolina. I know we've never been there, but let's move there.
Let's move.
And start this business in the non-travel capital of the country because that's where they live. And I trusted, which worked out. And I had just faith. And we moved here. It's going to be now 10 years.
It's so crazy.
Amazing
One
ride.
of the things that I really like about the opening part of your story, which I'm also just extremely passionate about and that I have loved watching you from a distance, is that you are so passionate about travel. It oozes out of you. And when I'm corresponding with the listeners or I'm working with readers or clients, one of the first things I always talk about is like, what are you passionate about? And can you align your career to something you're passionate about? Because then it doesn't feel as much like work. I know I'm aligned passionately. And so even though I do sometimes work crazy hours and I will overwork, so I got to be careful of burnout. We all know I talk about that. But for the most part, because I'm aligned with passion, like I feel energized. And I just want you to talk about that because I think with the listeners, sometimes they're like, can you really find a career that's aligned to your passion? And it's possible. So I just wanted to see what your 2 cents are on that.
It is possible. I mean, I am living proof of that. And how we met was through Women's Prosperity Network, right? And that was founded and led by Nancy Matthews. It was something in those circles. And Nancy loves to share a quote that is relevant to this conversation. And that is, when you are inspired, you're never tired.
Ooh, and so I just got the goosebumps.
Right? I always go back to that great quote because that's when you're so inspired and tapped in and you just feel like time melts away, you don't know where it went. And that's how I feel about what I do. And it is possible. I think that we live our lives on default. And like, I should have been a teacher or a lawyer because that was the path that was being outlined for me. That was the traditional path that you took after my degree. And that was what I saw a lot of people doing. But that doesn't mean that you have to. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. And we should on ourselves a lot. Yes. We always think we have to do what society says we quote unquote should do. And I'm a really big proponent of leaning into your passions. And there are so many ways to be profitable. And there's no shortage of opportunities that will bring you financial satisfaction and freedom and fulfillment. And I found that in my career. Were there times where I wasn't as financially compensated as I was relative to my skill set? Sure. Absolutely. But you know what? I knew what I was working towards and I was tapped into my mission. And that there's a difference there than when you're just grinding in a situation and you don't know why. So if you're tapped into your why and you're inspired and you find something that you're genuinely passionate about, you can be profitable and you can make a good living. And I think that there's sometimes a disconnect there in society. In fact, I have a really good friend whose husband is really into, and I'm not going to actually say the details about it because then it might give it away. So her husband has a real passion outside what he actually does for work, right? And I was speaking to him about it recently because there are ways to have a business and be profitable in what he's passionate about, but he is scared to quit what he's doing and lose that income. But there are ways to do that. It's not linear, but you
Right.
can follow that path.
Yeah, and that's what I share with people too, is that even in situations where maybe you can't monetize what you're passionate about, you have to weave passion in
Mhm.
somehow.
So well said.
Yeah, you have to. And I know Vanessa and I are both very big on personal development, and for
Yeah.
both of us to have the careers and outcomes we've had, we've done a
Yeah.
lot of that. But one of the things that I want to get into next is no career, especially when you get to the level that Vanessa's at, goes without some speed bumps. So I'd like to ask you next, what has been one of your bigger obstacles or challenges you've had to overcome?
Yes, great question. I'm so grateful for an amazing career, and I have been surrounded by incredible people and support. There's definitely been some bumps along the way. And the one big one that I know you played a huge role in keeping me sane and tapped in during that, as I mentioned at the beginning, a very confusing and frustrating time was I was not part of a company when I was pregnant with my son. I was not pregnant and then I became pregnant. And when I told my boss that I was pregnant, I was told that I wouldn't be able to do my job pregnant because there's just too many demands, but that was not true in any way, shape, or form. And it was a female boss, and my job was posted online within a week of sharing the news that I was pregnant. And this
Horrible.
was with a company that I was doing great. I had just won the company, like I was part of the very small team that had just won an award for the company. I was in a good place and I was on an awesome trajectory. And that just took the wind right out of my sail. And so to have this wonderful moment in your life, being pregnant for the first time, and I would come home every day crying my eyes
Right.
out because of the stress of thinking that I was going to get fired every day. And every morning, you and I would talk.
We would?
I remember I would take the dog out and I would be talking to you and I'd be with the dog and then I would put the dog away and then I would continue the conversation with you in the car on my commute.
Yep.
I'll remember that for months on end. You talked to me every morning and kept reminding me about my self-worth and how talented I was. And
Yeah.
I questioned whether or not I was meant to stay in the industry I loved because I was working for a company that made it very difficult for me and basically took action that would lead me to believe that I didn't have a future in the industry that I loved. And it was very hard. So, one of the things that I did to rebound from that after I left the company, it wasn't by choice. I certainly wasn't, and it was after I came back. So, that's a whole other thing. But the point is, I hired a personal development coach to help me make peace and navigate with an emotionally traumatic
Yes.
situation.
And it was traumatic. It
It
was,
was. And I want to encourage anybody listening that if you've had sort of that type of trauma professionally in any way, shape, or form, to honor that and to make peace and heal it in a way on your own terms. Because if you don't, it will pop up. You will harbor resentment. It will lash out in other ways. It'll bubble up at some point. And so I did make peace with that a long time ago. And one of the things that helped me through was as really Abraham Hicks. I know you and I
yes,
both
I love.
subscribe to
Yeah.
that. There's a quote from Abraham Hicks that says, everything is happening for you, not to you. And I love that reframe when it comes to difficult situations and getting curious as to why you're even in that situation in the first place and what are the gifts of being in difficult situations, because it's not always going to be a smooth sailing career journey. No one
Correct.
is immune to bad bosses or stressful situations. I'm like, nobody's immune to that. And it's imagine like if you take the perspective of it's all happening for you instead of to you, and that there's a gift in it, it changes the conversation and it helps you heal.
I mean, that was one of, I think, my biggest reframes when I went through the toxic work culture that I did was I was in a funky headspace for a long time. But once I realized that I'm in control and I get to choose whether I am going to believe the dialogue or go somewhere else, like that was just really empowering
It
to
is.
think about that this happened for me and not to me. Because like now, that whole situation, almost a decade later, 7, 8 years later, has given me the foundation and the confidence to do all the things that I'm doing now. So I had to get kind of thrown around a little bit to rise into the person I was meant to be.
And I was meant to have that situation at that particular moment in my career because I was very happy and I loved what I was doing and I loved the company, but I wasn't meant to stay there. And it was the push, I think, energetically I needed to cultivate my own path. I was destined for entrepreneurship and I followed that and in a very big way. And it has paid off personally and professionally. So I can see that now with perspective and I've been in a good place about it. And it is because I honor the personal development journey. In fact, I was just on a call with some of our members on a monthly call that I do with them. And I just said to one of our members, entrepreneurship is one big personal development
It really is.
journey. And if you can lean into that, you will enjoy the journey so much more.
Yeah, 100%. I do want to ask another question, but I also just want to comment the character that you have to be able to rise above that and go into the role that you are now. And I remember when you called me and said, hey, there's this entrepreneurial role. Do you think I should go for it? I'm really considering it. We're always like, yeah, go for it. I'm like, you get to be a co-founder and lead. I'm like, this is what you were destined to do. But like to see you actually do it and grow it into the successful business that it is today is just one, as a friend, I'm so proud, but it's just such a testament of our character and the resilience that's within us when we decide to use it and lean in it.
I really appreciate that. And sometimes it's hard, not hard is the wrong word. Like sometimes I don't honor it myself as much as I should because I'm so in the day to day. And in the middle of all of that, my husband and I, we had our second child that she's going to be 9 now in November, if you can believe that. And it's just been one big life milestone after the next. And then, I mean, throw in a pandemic in the worst hit industry on the planet, travel. So there was a whole segment of my career that was a different type of trajectory in terms of what I did on a day to day, obviously, in navigating a company in the pandemic was also for a whole other podcast.
Yeah, we'll table that one for another one.
I think that our company fared very well during that, whereas a lot of other obviously travel companies didn't. And a lot of it has to do with our mindset and our personal development journey and honoring that and staying focused on forward and staying focused on
that's awesome.
Positive.
So let me ask you another question. What's a current lesson or aha moment that's up for you right now?
Ooh, a current lesson. I had an aha recently, and it's regards to leadership. Awesome. So I took the month of July off this summer, which was a first for me. Nobody believed that I could actually do it.
And when you told me you were doing it, I was like, this is amazing. And are you okay?
I took the month off and I traveled around Europe with my kids, and my husband came for a little bit and my parents too. And so it was an incredible month. So leading up to that, so I have a few teams. One team specifically is our partner relations team led by Erica Whitaker, and she's incredible. And we basically built the partner relations department from the ground up, a lot of it at my kitchen table during the pandemic. And she's grown in her leadership journey, and I've grown in my leadership journey. We've grown together, and now she's leading a team, I'm leading her, and she's leading a team. So as you can appreciate, we've got a very strong connection. We're friends as well as colleagues, and we've been so intertwined. I have to create the space. My role as a leader is to cultivate leaders also. And so what I realized when I came back from vacation, being a month off and truly off, where Erica specifically she didn't come to me and she just made decisions and had to do the things without bouncing things off of me. And it was never like she had to come to me. We had just established this great working synergistic rhythm, right? That all of a sudden wasn't there when I wasn't there physically. And when I came back from being gone for a month, I felt a distinct shift in her leadership. I felt she's just showing up more confidently. Not that she wasn't before, but it was a very different type of energy. We had a discussion about this, her and I, actually yesterday. And I told her, I'm like, I know what the issue was. And not that there was an issue. There wasn't. It was a great relationship going into the summer. But she shifted while I was gone. And I said to her, I was in your way. And that was my aha. And I didn't realize it until I was removed from the situation, that I wasn't creating the space for her to step into her own journey because of how intertwined we are
Makes a lot of
professionally.
sense.
And it was a huge learning experience for me in terms of leadership on how I cultivate leaders within my team and help people step into their own journey. I didn't realize the codependency that existed until I left. And now I am like on a mission to ensure that all my team members have that same degree, feel that same autonomy and empowerment in their own leadership journey. And how do I get out of the way so that I can let others rise on their own?
I really love that you shared that because I think it's such a valuable lesson. So, whether you lead in business or in your community or in your family, I know, especially as moms, sometimes I'm just like, I'm going to do that for you because it's just going to be easier.
Yeah,
And I need that space.
and
So,
cleaner.
yeah, and cleaner. You're like, I do not need one more thing to clean up. Okay. But I recently learned that too. So I think it's really interesting that you're sharing that lesson because I work full time at Cisco and then I have my speaker writing business and I have one full time member and that's Lene. She's my COO. And it's just the two of us right now, but we're a bigger team because we have consultants and things like that. But what I realized is because her and I are so intertwined too, that my coach told me that we need not to communicate on things as much because it's stifling her ability to run the operations.
So that's what happened. And I
And I was
wasn't
like,
aware of
what?
it
No, I didn't mean to do that. I was
either.
just
No,
like,
right. It's
we
not
like doing this.
intentional.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was a big lesson for me too.
Right. And I had a different definition of what I perceived micromanaging was. I would never have said that I was doing that. I wasn't. It's a different form of it.
Yeah, the intention was different, but it was still because the collaboration was high, it
Mhm.
didn't allow her to independently make decisions. And that's what it was with Lene too. It's not that I was intending to hold her back, but she definitely is owning the role
Yes.
10 times better since she's
Yes.
making decisions on her own.
I love that story. Thank you. And it's something new for me because one minute we're solo or a solopreneur with, or then a very small team of 4 or 5. And now we're leading a team of 30 employees, just under 30 employees with over 300 independent contractors around the country. So this, for me, it's been a leadership journey, especially in the last 5 years and learning
Yes.
how to lead myself and then inspiring others to lead too.
I love that so much. And I kind of want to reframe the question, but build upon that. So, how do you think that this conversation that we're having could empower somebody else? For the listeners, if they're listening to us and are like, oh my God, what you're saying is resonating, how do you think it could empower their lives if they were to embrace some of the wisdom we've been learning lately?
Great question. I think I would start by saying everything is happening for you, not to you. And if you are currently experiencing a challenging moment in your career journey or in your life, just honor that and do some self reflection on how you can reframe it and how you can find the gift in that.
I love
And
that.
find somebody that can see the thing that's right here on the tip of your nose that everybody can see other than you. Find a friend like you are to me, like Becca is for Vanessa, and just get a cheerleader to help you get out of your funk because we can easily spiral. And it's important to catch yourself and to be self aware. So that's one thing. And then maybe something else, as we're talking about the leadership journey, if you're at a point in your career where you're responsible for others and you're leading a team and you're growing in that journey, know that your team needs you to show up in the best possible version of yourself. And you
Ooh.
have got to protect and be mindful of the energy that you bring to every single meeting and every single conversation and every single email. Like I would get into my like firing off email modes or just one sentence is, I'm busy. I got to bang this out. If you're leading, you're never too busy to be focused on the energy you're bringing. And that's been a big learning curve for me as a sort of started as a salesperson and then growing into this role. Your energy matters. And you can't have these ahas like I did with Erica on my team if you're constantly in checking off a box mode or do mode. That you have to also be. You have to focus on how you're being and how you're showing up and leading.
I love that so much. I got the goosebumps from head to toe too as you shared that, because it is just such a powerful message that how we show up impacts others.
It does.
And whether it's employees or children, because I realized that leading teams myself, that
Leading
they're,
households.
yeah, leading households, right? It's different,
It is.
but the similarities are that my behaviors are mirrored.
And it is a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but when you walk through that door and you're stressed about the day, or somebody just cut you off and you're pissed off and you just pull into your driveway, like, you got to check yourself, because the people in the house, they are watching you.
They sure are. And I realized when you were talking about sending the one-liners, I remember a point in time where I was doing that too. And then I would see my team doing that. And I'm like, what are you guys doing?
No.
And I was like, oh yeah, I started that. That was me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it. So I knew 30 minutes was going to fly by, but I am going to give you open mic. Like, if you want to share any other words of empowerment, a quote, or just something of inspiration with the listeners, here's your chance to. I know you got something in there.
I mean, just honor the personal development journey in your career and seek things that truly set your soul on fire, and find people that believe in you sometimes when you don't believe in yourself, and just take time for that. And I would also say travel.
Yes.
Travel, even if you don't work in the travel industry, travel. Take your kids, take your family, take your spouse, take your girlfriends, go on that trip, go discover new places. And it's amazing what a new perspective will give you in life for your professional journey, your personal journey, and getting out of your day to day rhythm and going and experience another part of the world that's not in your comfort zone will open up your mind and your heart and your soul to endless possibilities that exist for you. So travel, and of course use a travel advisor when you do that. But definitely travel. Travel is a form of self-development and personal development.
Sure
So
is.
I recommend that strongly.
That's awesome. So if the listeners want to follow you, what's the best way to do that?
The best way right now is LinkedIn. I'm a big fan of that platform. So please go ahead and find me, Vanessa McGovern. You'll see me there, pretty straightforward. And send me a LinkedIn request and put it in the message that you heard me on this podcast. And then I'd love to connect with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm sad we're at the end, but you'll have to come back.
Yes, yes. Thank you for having me. It's so fun.
Oh my God,
I'm
yes.
so proud of you. My
Oh,
goodness, to watch this take off in your book. Like, what an amazing journey you've been on. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I'll see you soon.